Hello guys, and welcome back to another tutorial. So in today's video we're going to learn how to make this backless halter neck top. If that sounds like something you're interested in learning, keep on watching and let us get right into this tutorial. So the first thing we're going to start off doing is we're going to place our tape, and then we're going to mark our bust point line. For me, that is 10 inches, our waistline, which is about 16 inches, and then the full length of the top. So I'm going to go ahead now to mark out those lines and then rule straight lines across. So after rolling out the lines, now on the shoulder area, I'm going to mark the shoulder measurements divided by 2. And then from there, we're going to come down by 1 inch and then mark the armhole depth. We're going to move on from there and just go ahead to rule out the armhole area. Next, I'm going to mark out the neck width and the depth. I'm going to just mark 3 inches and then come down again by 3 inches and just curve that out. Now we're going to start marking our body measurements. I'm starting off with the bust measurements divided by 4, and I just went ahead to mark that out, and then we're going to use that as a guide to just curve out the armhole to create our armhole at that point. Next, I'm going to mark the nipple to nipple measurements divided by 2. For me, that is 3.5 inches, and I'm just marking this all the way to the waistline area, and then I'm going to rule a straight line. But before that, I'm coming down from the bust point line by 1 inch, and then from that 1 inch we came down by, that is where we're going to rule the straight line. And then after which we're going to take out ½ inch on both sides for our dart, and then we're going to go ahead to curve this all the way to the top. Now I'm going to go ahead to mark my waist measurement divided by 4, and then I'm going to return the 1 inch that we took at that point. So I didn't know the bottom part wasn't visible, but basically what I did at that bottom part was I marked my hip measurement divided by 4, and I marked it out, and then we just went ahead to connect the lines to meet each other. Next, we're going to mark the difference between our shoulder to waist for the front and the shoulder to waist for the back. And I'm going to connect that to my nipple to nipple line here. And that is going to be our side dart. So now I'm just cancelling this out so you know we're going to close up this dart. Next, to create the neckline, on this neckline area, I'm going to come in by 1 1/4, and I'm going to mark that out. Next, we're going to go ahead to mark the depth of the neckline at the front area. I'm going to work with 7.5 inches, and then we're just going to curve this all the way down. So I'm just going to straighten this from the neckline area here all the way down. So this is going to be our new neckline. Next, we're going to curve from that 1 1/4 inch we went ahead to mark out all the way to the armhole area to create that halter neck effect. So this is what we have now. Next, I'm going to curve this from this point here down to that nipple to nipple line we have there. This is going to help us eliminate any excesses we might have at that point. So I'm just curving this to meet with that line we have there. So now I'm just going to take out ½ inch at that point, and then I'm going to curve it back into our line, as you can see me doing right now. So for the bottom part that is not visible, what I went ahead to do is I went inwards by 2 inches. And after marking 2 inches, I'm just going to connect it to this neckline mark we went ahead to create. So I'm just going to rule this from the top all the way to that 2 inches I marked out at the bottom. Next, we're going to go ahead to extend our nipple to nipple line, which is at that line, all the way to the bottom part of our top. So I'm just going to mark it out and then just rule it straight down. So after I was done extending the dart line, we want to go ahead to cut this out so we can be able to start closing up our dart. Now at the sides here, I'm just going to come up at the side here by 1 inch, and then I'm going to curve it back into the pattern just to curve out that shape, because we do not want that side of the top to be straight. Next, from the dart line we went ahead to extend downwards. I'm going to cut this all the way to our bust point line and then stop halfway, and then I'm also going to cut the side dart as well, just so when we close up our side dart, the opening is going to, the dart is going to distribute to the bottom part, as you see. So you can see that we have this very wide now, and we do not even have to do any more slash and spread at that point. Now I'm going to go ahead to tape down this part here so that we can also go ahead to close up the that we have at the top part. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead to straighten this part after closing up the dart, just so everything we have is equal and looking straight. So this is what it's looking like. Now moving on to close up this dart here, and then after closing this up, we just want to go ahead to tape it in place. After taping this down, we're going to go ahead to cut the remaining part out, but we're going to leave the neckline area and that midpoint area. We're not going to cut that part because we want to go ahead to use this to cut our back piece. So to cut the back piece, I'm simply going to fold the front piece like this. So I'm going to fold it downwards like this to the armhole area, as you can see, and I'm going to bring in a new pattern paper. We're going to place the the front piece on the pattern paper, and we're just basically going to trace out the front piece onto the pattern paper as it is like this. So I'm going to go ahead now to trace it out. Now after tracing out the back piece, we want to go ahead to cut out what is left of the front. So before we go ahead to work on the remaining part of the back piece, I'm going to go ahead now to cut this part out as well as the bottom part. Now what I did for the back piece is I went ahead to transfer the waistline for the front. I just went ahead to transfer it to the back, and I'm going to go ahead to rule a straight line so I know where the waistline is going to sit at the back. Now what we want to do is we want to go ahead to come up from this place by 1 inch. You can go ahead to use the where the waistline is, it doesn't really matter, but I just decided to go up by 1 inch, and then you want to rule it to the armhole area the way I just did. And then at the bottom part here, we're also going to mark it. I went ahead to mark about 5 inches. You can do 6 inches, and then we're going to rule this all the way to that point we created initially. So we're going to cut out this part as well as this part, and this is what we're going to use for the back. So this is our center back. This is the only piece we're going to have for the back, and then now we want to go ahead to cut out the parts we're not using for this pattern. So I'm marking that part out because we're going to have loops at that point. So I'm just going to mark it out. So these are the pieces we're going to work with for this top. Now we want to move on to cut this on our fabric. So this is the fabric we're going to work with for this tutorial. I'm working with 2 yards of this fabric simply because I'm using the 2 yards to make the top as well as the shorts. So that is what we're going to work with. Now we're just cutting the front piece and we're cutting this on fold. So we're cutting 2 pieces right now. And I went ahead to add 1 inch seam allowance at the bottom and 0.75 seam allowance at the sides. And then we're just going to add in ½ inch all around the other sides. Now I'm doing the same thing for the back piece. I'm adding 1 inch seam allowance at the bottom, 0.75 at the sides, and then ½ inch on the other sides. So we're going to cut this. We also have this on fold because we're cutting 2 pieces for the back. So to start sewing, I went ahead to cut out lining pieces for the front, as you can see. Now we want to place the lining piece and the main fabric piece right sides facing each other like this. I also went ahead to sew and iron fabric straps, and these are the fabric straps. I have them 4 pieces each and they're about 10 inches long. So I'm going to place it here at that point where the neckline stops, and then you want to go ahead to place another one here. I think I later went ahead to move this a bit upwards, but basically we just want to place the second one about 3 to 4 inches away from the first one. So now I'm just pinning them in place so we can start sewing. Now to sew this, we're going to go ahead to stitch this from the top all the way to this point and then take it straight down. So then on this armhole area, we're also going to close it up. Now we're done sewing, as you can see. Now I'm going to add another strap of fabric. This time is going to be at the neckline area. You can see that I'm inserting it inwards to that opening at the shoulder area. So I'm going to just push it all the way till we get to the tip of the shoulder area. And then what we want to do is we want to go ahead to just stitch that part down, so that we're stitching the strap for the neckline area and the main bodies together. So I hope you understand. If you have any questions, as always, you want to go ahead to leave it in the comment section below. So after we insert it in, like I said before, we want to go ahead to stitch them together. So you're going to stitch them together and we're going to work on the back piece. Now for the back piece, you can see that we have our lining piece the same way we have it for the front. I'm going to take out one piece and I'm going to show you how to attach this. Now we want to bring out the fabric strap for the back that we've gone ahead to sew and iron. So this is it. You can see that this one is a bit more longer than the one for the front. So we're going to go ahead now to attach it at the center back, as you see me placing this down, and then we're going to add our lining piece. So we're going to add the lining piece right sides facing each other like this, and you can see that we went ahead to sandwich that strap in between the lining and the main fabric piece. Now I'm going to pin everything in place so that we can go ahead to stitch it all the way and then take it straight down. So that's the only thing we're going to do. I'm going to take this to the machine now to sew so that we can go ahead to attach everything together. you want to go ahead to make sure that you're securing this very well so that it doesn't move, especially when you're working with those really shaky fabrics. So guys, after sewing, this is what the front piece is looking like. You can see that I've gone ahead to iron out everything, and this is what it's looking like. Now we're bringing in the back piece, and this is what the back piece is also looking like. We've gone ahead to iron out everything so that everything is laying very well. Now we want to go ahead to join the sides together. So you want to go ahead to place them down, making sure everything is aligned properly. You want to go ahead to open up the lining, making sure that the joinings are matching up with each other. So I'm going to pin this down in place so that we can sew. So I'm just holding everything together. You want to make sure you're pinning this all the way down so everything is staying in place for you to sew. Now to stitch this, we're just going to stitch it from this top all the way down, following the seam allowance we left out. We're also going to do the same thing for the opposite side. And then what's left to do is to just fold in the bottom part and we're done. So I'm going to do that and come back to show you the final result. So this is what the final result looks like. If you enjoyed watching this video and you found it helpful in any way, do not forget to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not yet subscribed already, and I will see you guys on the next one. If you have any tutorial requests, you want to go ahead to DM me on my Instagram or leave your questions in the comment section below. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.